Not live. All right. We are back. Episode 21.
21. We made it.
I just checked it.
You can officially drink.
Yes.
Can we do a cheers later on?
Sure. We do our water cheers.
Yep.
Brian's got his Diet Coke.
Symbolically.
Hopped up on Mountain Dew.
That's right.
We're back in the other studio for the time being for now. We'll
Yep.
see how this whole thing goes and some new setup here. So hopefully it works out. And
see if we get kicked out or not.
Yeah. Well, so let us know in the comments if you like this format and quality and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, we have we have a couple things. So we not only have Microsoft back in the news, our favorite.
Mm-hmm.
We have our other side of that, Apple.
So
yeah, we can't,
Apple's never in the news.
We didn't want them feeling left out, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that. I got some more bug bounties. We got some more ransomware. Yeah, it's a ransomware and kind of a 0-day. So, is there anyone you guys want to start with first?
Yeah, lots of blue chip companies getting hit, huh? So
never ends.
For what that's worth. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned ransomware, but we can start on the Conti ransomware. Some of the double extortion. They were kind of running a campaign against at least 400 different organizations, but at least 16 of them related to healthcare providers and first responder networks. So pretty bad. Yeah. It looks like there was initial access was through some spear phishing campaigns. So yeah, pretty indicative of what we're seeing quite a lot of this year.
Standard operating procedure almost, right?
Yep.
Spear phishing, ransomware, and then the double ransomware, pay me or else I leak everything, and vice versa. So it's just kind of continues to show the trend in 2021 and beyond. And whether it's gang 1 or gang 2, it's a lot of the same process and procedure that they're all following.
As a service, yeah.
And what we're getting into, and there's no slowdown in sight, right? Unfortunately, for these types of things.
Right, yeah. And even if on a lot of the dark net forums, these guys are just rebranding, popping up as something else. And that's kind of what's making it so I guess prominent this year is it's turned into more of a flushed out business model,
right?
Whereas before it was a lot of it was ad hoc, but they literally have customer service contacts and
negotiators, if you will, how to get the most ransom. It's almost like I won't say buying a car, but how to get the best deal and extort the most money. It's crazy,
I've even seen refund policies on some where it's like, if they're not successful in gaining a foothold or running the exploit, they'll give you your money back. And I'm like, wow, these are some service-oriented hackers here.
They have pretty strong SLAs there.
Right. They took a note out of a Bezos book or something. And,
well, a lot of times they won't take the money until they get the ransom.
Right.
As well, so they vet out the attack and say, yep, that looks like a bona fide one, we'll go for it. They'll do their quick little thumbprint on there. And then you see like the GitHub in the dark web where they're recycling the code over and over, and that's why they can pop up. So they find a new vulnerability, they just tweak the code a little bit, and then bam, they can go hit it.
Yeah.
So a lot of that from that perspective. And I think really, I've talked to a lot of people over the last couple of weeks where they're really concerned about email security in general, because that's where they're afraid that their users click on something or they do something in a rush that they shouldn't do, etc. And so micro training, I think, is one of the ways to help combat that right off the bat with end users, is keep it right in front of them to remind them to be vigilant of these emails that come in. And I'm always a big fan of, and I put jokes in my emails sometimes, like, did you click that link?
Yeah.
Because if you did, shame on you type of thing. Like, you should copy and paste that information over to validate, or go to the website direct. Like, it's your bank. Just go to the website, log in, don't click the link.
Especially if it's a system you're working in every day. I mean, if it's an HR system or your personal bank, just literally go to Google or whatever, your actual main hot link. You might have a bookmark, and it's worth the extra 2 seconds it's going to take you, if that.
Yeah, odds are you probably already have it up in one of your tabs, right?
Or I'm already in the system because I live in it every day. We have systems like that. Like, you're always in a Salesforce, for example. So Why click the link? Just boom, there you are.
And if you are going to click the link, at least hover over it so you actually see what the real link content is, right?
So interesting on this note, I'm sure we'll kind of get into this, but on the new iOS for 15, with QR codes, our favorite freaking thing, they actually changed it now to where if you take a picture or hover over the picture of the QR code, it tells you the link name. It'll say like apple.com, cool. Like it won't just be like mystery link. So
right.
That was a kind of neat feature I just recently learned because we were on vacation, had to use QR codes for menus and everything, and I was like, oh, it actually tells you going to Microsoft or whatever it was. So
yeah, because it's a big layer of trust there, just assuming that the link is safe and sending you directly there, especially if the site itself is compromised and it runs a script, it's like some stored XSS as soon as you get there, starts stealing cookies from other sites. So yeah, I mean, I think honestly for most vendors that leverage the QR technology, they should probably have that kind of hover feature. But even that can be exploited in some situations. So I think to your point, it's still better to manually navigate to the site over clicking the link. But if you are going to, at the very least, hover over the link. Not all gateways security software is going to catch that. So particularly if it's like a newly established site where they don't really have a bad reputation or a good reputation, those are generally how I see them get through the gateways. So yeah, definitely don't click those links.
And another QR code topic, again, our favorite subject, I saw a picture of someone with a QR code tattoo. I was like, wow, okay, that's a bit much maybe, but hey, I guess they're now mainstream media. So there you go. If you guys want a QR code tattoo, all you.
Yeah, hopefully it wasn't a sensitive site that it's sending everybody to.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at that.
So people pay the ransom primarily because of the data that leaks nowadays. And then you'll see when they can't get it recovered will kind of be the secondary reason overall. Yeah. So like in this case with the Tulsa Police Department, over 18,000 files were released because they refused to pay. Yeah. But that's why I see companies...
It's almost kind of shifting now from...
Changing.
The primary being the extortion versus just the locking up the files. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's probably because, like you said, the exposure of the files is probably more has deeper ramifications than, say, just losing access to it entirely, especially if there's IP in there or there's customer data. It's like...
HR info.
Boardroom is looking at this from like a risk, financial risk perspective, and it's like I think there's more liability and risk than losing your customers' data than there is perhaps losing your access to your own where you may or may not have backups to, and if you don't, that's a bummer. But I think extortion, and then that's why you're seeing double extortion attempts here, where it's like not only are they extorting you through threatening to release your files, but they're also not going to give you your content back. But no, and then to that point, it kind of circles into the next thing, which is I wanted to ask you guys, like, do you think by paying the ransom, this actually opens you up to getting targeted again? Because one of the issues topics we had for today was for the agriculture company.
New cooperative, I believe.
Right, new cooperative that got hit by, I believe it was it was Black Matter.
Right.
And who has ties to Revel. But yeah, they had already been through this kind of incident. And they paid the ransom before. And so it makes me wonder, does this indicate that gangs are more likely to go after companies that have already paid the ransom once and perhaps haven't maybe improved their infrastructure or didn't really show indicators that they have improved their infrastructure because they know they'll likely pay it again?
Sure, you restore the system, you don't fix the vulnerability, and they come right back in.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you're already a known quantity at that point. They know you pay. I think we've read an article before where 80% is a statistic that get hit again because they don't remediate that. So the vulnerability is most likely still there.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you do end up having to pay, like, you're now a more even prime target, in my opinion, because they know you've done it. They've gotten him once before at least. Their chances are probably still in the network to some regard. To me, it's just like, I don't want to say it becomes low-hanging fruit, but especially in this one, right? Because this is now a, kind of pseudo supply chain type issue with the software and how much it controls. And, first it's kind of like, hey, pipeline, some gas, but now we're getting into food supply. We kind of talked about this before and how difficult that can really be. And And like you want to see panic in some kind of country, just start playing with people's foods and food supply, like that'll change behavior real quick, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's pretty intense, not just healthcare and financial motivation now. It's seriously impacting a lot of people potentially. So
Well, yeah, and when they have potentially that much impact, if that kind of organization goes down, the odds of them paying or at least getting subsidies from somebody else to pay the ransom is really high. So they're definitely incentivized to do so. Which brings up the question: if they've been attacked before, if they know how critical their organization is to critical infrastructure, then why did they not remediate? Do they still see it as more expensive than the actual ransom itself? I mean, to me, that's probably the only reason why you wouldn't have improved your infrastructure at all since your previous compromise, right?
yeah, and then it kind of raises the liability. It's like, hey, like if you were hit and you did have an issue and it happens again, does that become like your kind of fiduciary responsibility at the lead of the company to say, hey, like maybe I didn't do everything I should have or could have? Now it raises even more potential regulation and other red flags and investigations, and it's just not a good scenario. I don't think anyone wants to be in, right? So
Yeah, well, their insurance premiums are probably at the very least going to go up. So
At a minimum.
yeah,
I mean, we're seeing that over the industry because of how much they are paying out, how much the premiums are going up, and they won't cover you if you don't have certain EDR, the endpoint detection response solutions deployed, and two-factor authentication, and now they're naming the specific ones that you have to have in the environment, which is just blowing my mind off that insurance companies are now regulating cybersecurity to some degree.
right.
That's crazy to think of.
yeah, I think to your point, I'm just reading another kind of topic here as part of the side ones, and this one talks about the average ransomware demand and cybersecurity insurance has gone up, tripled basically in the last year.
Wow.
Of what the policies are going for and things like that. So it's definitely on the rise. And
Yep. Bar is increasing.
So thinking of supply chain attacks, just skimming through this article, 40% of grain production runs on that one software.
Yeah.
40%. Imagine
That's a
if there
pretty
was a
big market
supply
share.
chain attack through all of that, through that software, and something was doing something wrong that spoiled all the grains that came through. I mean, that would just be, wow, huge.
Yeah, because also with this, like this is something you're going to see like immediate. Like the pipeline for fuel, like that's a pretty quick, like, hey, within a couple of days, like you are going to feel it. With this, it could be a delayed 6-8 week type of cycle between like, oh, the grains got spoiled and then the food supply and then whatever, the whole thing trickles down. So it could be like a long term type of effect there, which is also a little bit different in cybersecurity world, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people were kind of claiming that they aren't necessarily critical infrastructure, but with an impact like that, I would kind of put that into the same category.
Yeah,
and they should at least operate as such, right? And it's kind of creates this gray area where if we start to regulate these and classify certain people as critical infrastructure, like our certain org is going to try and avoid that to get out of meeting like certain compliance and regulation. Like, do they even want to be considered critical infrastructure?
Right. It's kind of, you can kind of go both ways. Like it's probably better for some regards, and it's like, maybe I don't want that much attention on me because they're going to find more stuff if they start picking it apart, right?
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So something else that just popped in my head is John Deere and locking out their systems and the right to repair stuff that's been out there. Like, how does that apply into all this? Because all the schematics and everything else, steering control inputs, all that got leaked out in this one attack. But like, is there something to that, to have that closed ecosystem where you don't want the people in there to repair the systems and that stuff to leak out? Or is that too much freedom taken away to be able to bring in a third party to repair it?
Yeah, well, there's definitely two prevailing thoughts, and I think this is like a controversial topic as to like whether researchers or certain groups of people should be allowed to get in their hands on this software, because then otherwise the vulnerabilities are only the only people aware of the vulnerabilities are John Deere, Apple, or whoever it is themselves, and then it's like what you're seeing with Apple, where they're like backlogged. I don't know how many tickets to vulnerabilities. It's like, well, you can't rely on them by themselves to patch these things, and so at the very least, and that's just from the patching perspective, from like the discovery perspective, as you're kind of alluding to, that's for everything that we find, they're still going to have to go in and remediate. So I don't know. I think like there's almost like the security of through obscurity layer by like not giving vendors access, but perhaps long term that's not necessarily like the better model, because then when something does come up, it tends to be a much bigger fallout, much bigger impact. They find 10 vulnerabilities as opposed to one, because there's no researchers going in there and finding these things. So
it's almost kind of like that, closed system versus open source type of conversations that come up. It's like you said, like which is better, like one that's literally open where everyone can pick it apart and find things, or one that's maybe more tightly integrated, controlled, and you can kind of argue pros and cons of each one, right? I mean, there's certain aspects that I think are better on some, and some that are like, well, maybe in this case it was better to be the opposite, right? And I think as kind of society changes and we get deeper into software and become much more reliant on it, having more eyes on glass, if you will, and picking things apart is not necessarily a bad thing, so.
Yeah, and like more open bug bounty programs I think could help with that. Like maybe the issue is getting the correct researchers on these things. Like I think that's what the fear is that they don't want to expose this stuff to the wrong eyes, but perhaps there's a way to register yourself or apply as a researcher through an organization or third party, like accredited third party, who then acts as kind of like an intermediary between researchers and the actual software itself, and then they can do it that way or with some limited degree of access. There definitely needs to be some give on one of the sides to allow researchers to define more of these things, because otherwise, you have like 4 or 5 just from Apple this week regarding the NSO Group's Pegasus surveillance tool. So and I know you were mentioning TikTok, how they don't even allow, and like some social media platforms aren't allowing the POCs of certain exploits and research.
They'll rip them down immediately once they get reported.
Right. It's I understand why, but at the same time, I'm not sure how productive that is for defenders. So
if they can't get out there and learn and practice how to do some of that stuff, I guess. So the big issue with some of the Apple stuff is that it's a zero-click type of model to be able to get in. Like I can remember back where that text message used to be sent and it could take over. I mean, talk about damaging.
That's scary.
Very
and
similar.
just send a message and write over. Well, I mean, same thing with zero-click. I didn't have to click on something to cause it. It just got pushed down on me. So that's one of the concerning things with these zero-click type of remote attacks. And I'm sure that some of this stuff has been known for a long, long time. I mean, this one was February 2021 that it's been out there. So and then the criticality, like Apple went back and did iPhone 5S all the way back, so they were willing to go back and open up the archives, if you will, and get that patched.
Yeah, that's kind of like saying, hey, we're going to go patch Windows 7 or XP because this is a big deal.
And you don't really see Apple do that quite as often as, say, someone like Microsoft. So I mean, and I think it was a lot of it because like they weren't a target for a while. Most of because the reason the people who are targeting these devices are targeting them for surveillance purposes for certain individuals.
Correct.
Whereas like before the attack or the goals were more like financially motivated, so they target larger organizations with larger repositories of data, perhaps valuable IP, and so that's why it's like now that the focus is on Apple, there's like this windfall of vulnerabilities, and so that's why I think the vulnerabilities are so critical now, is because like you're looking at stuff that hasn't probably been addressed for maybe 10 years, or looking at OSs or that haven't been addressed for, I think, like you said, when was it? 2000, I don't have it here, but a few years ago that these have been around. So it's not like these are new vulnerabilities to newer operating systems. Yeah.
No, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, like these things are going to kind of continue, and it's almost like a shotgun versus a scalpel approach, right? Like, some of these were like targeting specific users, and I think probably a lot of journalists and things like that we've seen. And other, maybe on the ransomware side, it's more about like, hey, we're trying to just kind of get in and take down a whole, I don't want to say company, but industry or vertical, or whereas these were like, hey, I'm trying to target XYZ specifically. So it's a different approach, but it again kind of comes back to that bug bounty, and companies probably, in my opinion, should be doing a little bit more with that and allowing a little bit maybe better process and how they can operate with these things and submit bugs and get some recognition. And I mean, it's in my opinion, in the grand scheme of things, like it's just a great way to go about it. We just need to get better at it as an industry, I think.
Yeah, the only bug I want fixed right now is Face ID. When I go to open it, it won't unlock with my watch anymore. There's a known bug in the iPhone 13. I mean, what a shame. But anyways,
world problems, Brian.
I know, that's all I care about right now is the frustration at the punch in the code.
Tell me how you feel. Well, you kind of get used to, like when you travel and you have to wear the mask all day, you're like, oh man, you got to start punching your codes again. Face ID doesn't work. So.
Like I yelled a few times for taking the mask.
Yeah, you get tired of
But I got used to not having to do it, having my watch
That's
right
true.
there.
That's
It's
true.
all good. So I know Microsoft is back in with their Exchange bug. Go figure.
Yeah, that's
a gift that keeps on giving.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this one's pretty big. A lot of potential for capturing clear text domain credentials, through basic HTTP authentication. But yeah, the exploitation of the auto-discover protocol essentially leaks a whole lot of domains. So this has resulted, I think, about 100,000 logins and passwords for different Windows domains worldwide. So yeah, pretty huge issue here. Then if you actually exploit this in an environment where you can either sniff traffic or you have control over the domain, you can get clear text credentials this way. So the combination of the two, pretty bad.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting kind of process of how they went through this and determine kind of like the flow of what it looks at first and how you can kind of check it and deny it, and then like you said, kind of force that HTTP versus secured, and really start seeing all these credentials come into a honeypot. Like, well, that's pretty useful information, right? So
I mean,
scary
you
stuff.
You talk about phishing people. Like, you don't even need to phish people now. You just have a list of email accounts that are compromised. And the thing I love about that, or not necessarily love, but just breeds more, because then you can not only target people within your organization with those compromised emails, but outside the organization through that trust layer. And it's a lot harder to tell, as we have some experience with, when your vendors or your partners are compromised than when you're compromised.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I mean, this I think is going to lead to more ransomware events, because if an attacker group was able to get or a nation state or an APT was able to get their hands on any amount of these credentials, then you can be sure that they're going to be used in chain phishing attacks in the future.
Just think, Outlook and that prompt that comes up, as an end user, you're not thinking twice.
Yeah.
You're just going to keep putting your credentials in. Oh, it failed. Okay, try it again.
Like
it failed.
Maybe I fat fingered my password. Let me change it.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Why would I change any of that?
Check. Like, sweet. It's, credential harvesting for this whole thing.
Well, we all know that you're using fall 2021 exclamation point for your password.
That's true. We changed
F.
We changed from summer 2021 to fall 2021. So make note.
Exactly.
Please update your passwords, everybody, to
fall 2021.
So then you find the pattern that the user's using, because they're going to try all their different patterns, and you can kind of follow that as well. So it will be interesting to see how that turns into the BEC, VEC type of attacks over time.
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, I definitely think that's going to be kind of the primary thing that comes out of this, because if an organization has a decent segmentation and they're using, we all love to say it nowadays in the past few months, zero trust, even if they get access to one of these accounts, hopefully they shouldn't be able to pivot too much with it or gain too many pieces of sensitive information outside of what that user has access to. So I think that's one of the primary mitigations here, is just making sure that you do have those controls in place outside of disabling the HTTP basic authentication, and then also turning off the fail up for auto discover.
We haven't started our favorite keyword yet, MFA.
Oh no!
Had to do it. Sorry.
Well, something that just came in my mind is I used to work at a place that would not allow you to access your email off the VPN. I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. But then
now you kind of see why.
The more that you look at it, it's like, oh, from a security lens, no, that's great, because you have to be on the VPN with your MFA in
That's
order
right.
to access the email server, so that if a server is compromised,
Yeah.
the stuff doesn't get out. Now, it doesn't stop auto-discover from trying to call home. So in this scenario, I don't know how effective it really is, but all these other vulnerabilities that we've seen to date would be mitigated by not allowing this to occur. You can't get the web shell in there
Right.
from that perspective.
Mhm.
So
And it's always that kind of, as we always say, the defense in depth, layered in depth security. Got to kind of do multiple things, and it comes back to password management. It was interesting, kind of jumping back real quick to the new cooperative. One of the articles I was reading kind of talked about that a lot of the passwords were essentially leaked in credentials and stuff, and apparently Chicken One was used many times in this.
I thought it was password one.
No, I
the
used
chicken
chicken
one.
one because I guess
Wow.
if you're in the grain feeding business, it makes sense. So chicken coop one or something. I don't know. It's
That
called-
must have been like the default admin, new user.
Yeah, new
password,
user,
yeah.
like-
Oh, so now I know how to open my chicken coop now.
Right.
Chicken one, I got it.
Chicken One changed me. So.
So yeah, no.
But yeah, this one for the auto discover is an interesting one, and kind of abuses some of the, I would say more of the like logic of how something works than a specific maybe vulnerability to some extent, right? And understanding how the thing kind of failed up, and how, like you said, what you can kind of get yourself into by taking over a domain or knowing what kind of points where, and just essentially honeypotting everything and grabbing it and using those credentials elsewhere if you can, right? So
Yeah,
good stuff.
very good stuff. Yeah, this one was fascinating. Hopefully we'll get some POCs running in our own environment here soon. So
Nice.
Sammy can't wait to get his hands on it, right?
always.
Well, I know we have a big month ahead of us here with the cybersecurity month.
We do. Yeah, so I think we're going to have a couple extra shows coming up. We're going to try to do, I believe, one a week, follow some kind of industry topics. You'll see some more content on social media. Trying to do what we can to help educate people, and it's always kind of fun to give back and train the average users and some things like that. So we should have a lot of good tips and tricks. And
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, and if there are topics that you guys want us to go over or cover, please feel free to comment,
Yeah.
and we'll definitely go over them. So,
let us know for sure, because we can get kind of go wider and deeper on some of these things. And
oh yeah,
should be some exciting stuff, and it's been a
Exactly.
wild year for cybersecurity for sure, with
Oh yeah.
everything going on, right? So
As soon as everybody was walking out with their desktops, we knew it was going to be a fun year ahead.
keeping us busy, right? Yeah.
yeah, we had a lot of those situations for sure. It's like, we can't tell you how many calls we got. It's like, hey, I have like 1,000 employees. I need to work from home tomorrow. What do I do? It's like, okay, well, let's start here, and then but keep in mind security. Don't just throw it out the window.
Right.
With the
Right.
whole-
Let's get this VPN network set up and get everybody
Yeah.
required to be on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
lots of good content coming, and should be.
yeah, Brian will have some pretty good ones coming up during the month, I imagine. Some
Well, let's not
shorts.
set the bar too high.
Yeah.
So don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes.
Follow us on social media,
Comment. Let us know what you guys want to see more of, less of.
and you'll be seeing us more often soon. So stay tuned.
Sounds great. Take care.
Thanks.
Guys.